Hello, this is Angelo with Season 10, Episode 6 of the Otafest podcast, and with me today are Nancy and Jay.
It's us.
That's me.
Unexpectedly, I'm sure.
It's never the same bat time and the same bat place.
Never. Never.
How unexpected. But before we get too far into the episode, we have some news and announcements. We are excited to announce that Alejandro Saab will be joining us at Otafest 2025.
Hooray!
Alejandro is best known for voicing characters such as Cyno from Genshin Impact, Leon in Pokemon Journeys, Yuri in Fire Emblem Three Houses, Kaigaku in Demon Slayer, Kensuke Aida in Evangelion, Treble in One Piece, Tsukauchi in My Hero Academia, and many others. Alejandro also primarily posts content online as a VTuber known as Sayu VTuber. He's amassed an audience on TikTok of 600,000 plus followers, 100,000 plus on Twitch, and more on YouTube.
Not to mention, you can be a single elevator ride away from Otafest by booking your stay at the Calgary Marriott Downtown Hotel. They're offering a special rate for Otafest attendees. The reservation link for the special Otafest rate will be available at otafest.com.
Just this past year was my first time in probably, since the end of the pandemic, that I didn't stay at the hotel for Otafest.
Huh.
And it is so much easier, even living here in town, it is so much easier staying at the hotel.
Yeah, we got spoiled.
As not to give anything away, but I probably live the closest to the hotel overall.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. Even though I could have the
Even
creature
then.
comforts of home, and even though I didn't stay at the hotel this year for other reasons, I do like the hotel.
Sometimes
really
it's
nice.
just nice to be like an elevator ride away from quiet privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so comfy. It's so nice.
I have to say, obviously it's like concrete build and everything like that, so there's half decent sound dampening between units, but despite everybody and everything that goes on in the hotel, I've never had an issue with sound bleeding over from a different room. I've always been able to get good rests. It's a good time. I recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously.
I'm also really excited that we're getting more VTuber guests again. I am an unapologetic VTuber simp.
I'm
and
a
Sayu is just a
enjoyer.
cool dude.
I'm very
pretty
excited
about that.
I'm excited for whatever panel content Alejandro will be coming with.
Ooh, I'm sure there will be lots of stuff.
This is the problem with having my brain. I think of really irrelevant, silly things, such as when we announced Alejandro, and I'm sure he gets it all the time. I wonder what it's like to live when your first name is part of a very popular title for a Lady Gaga song. In the same way that Caroline must have been an interesting name to have when Sweet Caroline came out. Things like that, where I'm like, is that just a constant annoyance, or do you just roll with it?
It really depends on your mentality about it, right? If you remember the famous movie Office Space, one of our main characters, one of our three heroes of the movie was called Michael Bolton. And he was like,
right.
Why should I change my name? I had it first.
That's right. The other part I was thinking about is also his surname. I'm like, is he related to the people who made the cars?
And jets.
I saw a Saab on the road the other day, actually.
Those are rare to see now.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
they
not as common
stopped
as they used to
production.
be.
They stopped
Yeah.
production 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, I think
Really?
they went out around the same time as Saturn did.
Yeah, and Pontiac
Really?
and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of them.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Well,
Saw one rolling around downtown.
I can tell you that I have a friend whose name is Alexa, and she absolutely despises the fact that all of those smart home devices all use her name. By all rights, she had it first.
Oh my God, you've
I
doxed
can't
her.
blame. I can't blame. As a very small comparison, there is a song called Angelo's, and it's about having breakfast at a place called Angelo's, and it's fantastic. I sing it to myself all the time. I'm like, let's go to Angelo's, where the service is tops. We'll go to Angelo's. Yeah, we'll be licking our chops. We'll go to Angelo's. We'll just have to boast about the eggs over easy, hash browns and toast.
We're gonna get
song.
DMCA'd
It's such a good song. No one knows that song. We're not gonna get DMCA'd.
on an
I
even
also
more
sang
tangible,
it wrong, but it just works.
even more more of a tangent here. I went to the theater and watched Transformers 1, which was a kind of a good time. I'm not huge
As
into
in the
Transformers.
first Transformers, or is there a new Transformers?
It's an animated movie of the
Oh,
Transformers.
so it's not like a new Michael Bay one. Okay.
No, it is. It's produced by Michael Bay. It's not directed by
Is
him.
it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
But it's a good time. It's a good little new series reboot, going the animated cartoon 3D style. But in the credits, I don't remember under what umbrella of production, but I saw someone with 95% the same name as me. And if you know any Chinese, they have the same name as me because their last
Oh
name
my
is the homonym
gosh.
of mine.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
That must have been interesting.
Like the spelling and everything. I was like, all right then.
I
mean-
don't remember working on this.
Yeah. Clearly, it's what's been taking all my time.
Evidently.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Evidently.
Interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah. Anyways, now that
I feel
all that's settled, we can move on to other relevant things like
So 2 days
Thanksgiving
ago was
eggs.
Thanksgiving.
Unless
Unless you're us.
2
Unless
days
you're
ago.
yeah.
2 days ago into our future/past was
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
It's Thanksgiving tomorrow for us. We're recording this on the Sunday before. And oh my lord, I'm going to have a good time cooking.
Me too.
It is
What do you
going to
got
be
on
my
deck?
first time cooking a big meal in my kitchen.
That's true. You do have a new kitchen for said big mealin'.
Yeah. Having that said, we don't even have a kitchen table. We have a folding
Kitchen
table.
tables
And
are
we're
overrated.
probably going to be sitting down the parents and sibling at that while the rest of us chill out in the living room across the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited. I'm excited. It was really last minute. We decided on Thursday that we were actually going to be making anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that very evening I went out. I bought the finest bird loaf that $25 could get me.
Oh yeah. I'm proud of you, buddy.
I have seen the way. I am
Yes.
no longer buying full-size turkeys. They are
Hell
just
no.
they are a
Unless
lot of
you-
work.
Yes, they are.
To be fair, if you have a lot of people, then it makes sense.
Well, it's
Yeah,
also
but then you
like if
gotta
you
do all
really
that
want to make the
carving.
bone broth after.
Exactly.
Like, I get it. I do get it. There's merits to the whole bird. But if you just after the meat,
2.5 pounds of meat. It takes up like a quarter of the space.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the fridge and everything. It's enough to feed all the people. I also bought some like little Black Forest hams. They were on a really good sale. So we're gonna have some turkey. We're gonna have some ham. I was looking for a nice stuffing recipe, and I found something that's really interesting. Have you guys ever had or ever heard of cornbread stuffing?
yes.
Yeah?
I can't say I have. So you'll
I
have to
had
explain
never
it to me.
heard of it either. I'd never heard of it, but I took one look at this recipe and I was like, I want to make that. I want that in my mouth. Like,
Do you
like
want
now.
to put
Can I
the
make
corn
it
into the
before?
bread?
Yeah. So, I woke up super early. I woke up 3 or 4 hours earlier than I wanted to this blessed Sunday morning. And I decided that I would use that time to make some nice homemade cornbread that I could leave over the counter to dry out and become the perfect recipient for stuffing. Stuffing. And it's really interesting. Whereas your traditional stuffing, from my perspective at least, you got your bread, you got your mirepoix, you got your seasonings and herbs. You'd frequently throw in some like mushrooms in there, maybe. You're throwing in like maybe cranberries or apple slices, even getting some sweetness in there. The ingredients list for this, aside from cornbread, which is a bit of an unusual ingredient from stuffing from my perspective, also includes sausage.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It has the root. The roots come from
Interesting.
the South, like the American South, not the
Oh,
Canadian South,
definitely.
of which we are already a part of the Canadian South. Uh,
Just
But-
about everybody lives in the Canadian South.
Basically.
Yeah, it's true.
99% of Canadians live in the Canadian South.
There are still people who live further south than us, though.
True.
We don't talk
Uh,
about Lethbridge or Southern Ontario.
But yeah, like it has its roots from the American South, kind of, what is it? Sausage gravy and
Yeah.
cornbread, and yeah, I mean it's a good time. I can see why you could.
And other than the cornbread and
adapt
sausage, we got
turkey.
onion and celery in there.
Yep.
I got
Mm.
myself some fresh parsley, oregano, and sage. Some Monterey Jack cheese to go in there.
Did
And
you
I
pick
guess
the
technically-
sage? Did you pick the sage from all fields?
No. I
Oh.
actually I went to a school of magic.
Ah,
And I went to like one of their I found the person with the longest beard, and I figured they would be the perfect sage to cook. Yes.
he'll
Yes,
be
which
missed.
part of the sage are you?
Actually, I went to the grocery store. They were completely sold out of all of their bundles of fresh sage,
Oh no.
but they had pre-bundled herb mixes for poultry specifically, and they had a lot of sage in them, so I just bought one of those.
Oh,
Okay. Dried sage is pretty good.
if you ever want to grow your own sage, I might still have some leftover seeds.
Oh, neat. Maybe I will. All
Yeah.
of my other herbs and things are doing very nicely.
Good.
But yeah, I am not gonna lie, I am stupidly excited for the stuffing specifically. And I guess it's technically called dressing since I don't have a bird to put it in. It's
I
just gonna be cooked
guess.
alongside.
That's fine. Doesn't
That
have
is
to
the
be
other
stuffed
thing.
I'm calling it
within.
stuffing.
I personally, unless there is like a very definitive, objectively good reason to do so, I don't really understand stuffing the bird anymore. Just cook it off to the side. It cooks faster. Your bird cooks more thoroughly without concern for rawness somewhere in the middle.
Very
The
true.
flavor is just fine.
Very true.
Oh yeah, that is one thing. Whenever we made stuffing in the past and put it in the bird, obviously it tastes amazing. Like stuffing is probably my favorite part of the meal. But the stuffing that's cooked in the bird versus the stuffing that's cooked on the side of the bird, honestly, I haven't noticed much of a difference.
As long as you add the right ingredients back in, like you can use some chicken broth to
Exactly.
give it some savory kick and everything like that. Like you're not missing that much. And I don't think the stuffing, when prepared in the turkey, I don't think it perfumes the turkey very much at all.
No, absolutely not.
No,
So-
it doesn't really penetrate.
I have never
Yeah.
heard that argument that the stuffing
So-
flavors the bird.
Yeah, so if
It's
that's
there to soak up all the bird juices, if anything.
Exactly.
but you can use the bird juices instead for gravy, which is also very
course.
important.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Gravy is, yum.
What are your
Ugh.
plans for the giving of thanks, Nancy?
I give great thanks to my wonderful family who made the difficult decision to move to Texas because the last time they came back, they brought with them American Wagyu, and we're going to have some of that
Oh,
for our
my.
Thanksgiving meal today.
Wow.
Ooh.
It's like it doesn't even have to be like A5 Wagyu for it to be good, right? Like even low grade Wagyu is very, very tasty. It's good. We're
Well, I
we're
think
gonna
at
have
this
some
point,
really good steaks.
like Wagyu is more of a method of raising the beef cattle than it is, I feel like that very specific grade of meat. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
I
aren't
think it's all
Wagyu
good.
cows like a specific species of cow?
Yeah, it's a specific lineage of cows, and yes, they did
Hmm.
import something originally, but they have since bred many cows from that originating line,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's really good. I really like it, and it's really affordable to get Wagyu, like American Wagyu down there. So it's just a
Damn.
nice treat. Yeah, we're gonna have some steak. I'm gonna make some mashed potatoes and possibly also some crispy potatoes because I have a parent who really likes mashed potatoes and I have a parent who really likes like crispy hash. So I will just make both and they can both be happy.
Oh, hell
Nice.
yeah.
Make a tiny little bit of rice on the side, probably make some gravy because you can't have mashed potatoes and beef without some gravy.
You need
And then,
gravy. A Thanksgiving without gravy is scarcely a Thanksgiving at all.
I know, right? But yeah,
Like sometimes
good.
gravy is just too much. It's a little bit extra. You don't on a random Tuesday you're not making gravy. But on Thanksgiving there better be
You're
gravy.
You
making
deserve
gravy.
gravy.
We deserve gravy for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna make a fruit salad for something to have on the side that isn't super savory and rich and heavy.
And then you can put gravy over that if you want.
No!
And makes
Hell
it just
yeah.
as savory as everything
if I'm
else.
not dipping my strawberries in gravy, am I really living?
True.
I have no answer to that question. I think this is an experiment for us to legitimately try perhaps the next time we get together for dinner again
refuse.
as
I refuse.
podcast
He
hosts.
refuses to get together for dinner. Not
Oh,
to
wow.
dip strawberries in gravy, just to be clear. As an order, as a point of order there.
Yes.
I had two thoughts
The
while you were
face
saying
Angelo's
that.
making right now, I know all the listeners can't see it, but that face, he's laugh wincing and it's awful. Because that's exactly how I feel about strawberries dipped in gravy.
The things that came
I'm
to mind.
speechless. All I can do is laugh at the absurdity of dipping a strawberry
Strawberry
in gravy.
gravy.
Correct.
Oh my god, my strawberry plants. So they've been out on the balcony almost ever since I moved in. And eons ago, you may remember me and Dio talking about how we made our little IoT greenhouse.
Indeed.
That has been sitting empty since we moved in. And once we finally started getting the frigid, frozen weather outside, I decided to set it back up to get everything working and migrate all of my strawberries back into the greenhouse. While doing this, I hadn't actually been getting many strawberries over the last couple months. And I realized it's because magpies have been coming and eating them all.
Those jerks.
I found one strawberry in the far back, and it was the largest strawberry I have gotten off my plant so far. It was maybe an inch across. By all accounts, it is a small strawberry, but from my plants, it was large. It was big. It was wonderful. And it was so sweet with a little bit of tartness. Ooh! Ooh! Fantastic.
That's wonderful. I have been keeping my little green onions alive. I think there was one night in the last month where we got a frost warning overnight and I pulled them in for the night, but I haven't remembered to do it since. So if it has been dropping down to like near freezing overnight, I haven't been doing it, but they're still thriving and that's great. I'm going to keep them that way until frost actually kills them and then I'll start a new batch next spring.
Hell yeah.
But they're still growing. I've been putting them in my omelets. They're so good.
Nice.
They're big and chonky too. They're not like those wimpy little ones where you get a batch, you bring them home, you put them in a jar full of water, and then they kind of grow, and then they just sort of get
Have you
wimpy.
just been clipping the greens off of them and using that, or like actually pulling the onions out?
No, I've just been clipping all the greens off because you can cut pretty far down before you shouldn't be cutting there. But
Nice.
they've been good. They've been really flavorful.
I'm glad. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
Oh, oh my God! You think that we're a food podcast with all the times we talk about cooking and food?
But you know what? There are times where it does cross over with being an anime podcast.
Every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Every
I
now.
don't know
and
what you're
then.
talking about.
So Jay,
Please explain.
you've been watching something that's kind of like Shokugeki no Soma meets Physical 100.
I don't
Tell
know
me
what you're
more.
talking about. Please explain.
You were the one who put it on the document. I don't know anything about culinary class wars.
Well,
The only class wars that I want are overthrowing the bourgeoisie.
Ah, okay. I'm okay
what
with
if you're
that.
not strong enough to overthrow and you have to underhand throw the bourgeoisie?
Hey, if we're throwing them, then we're already winning.
All right.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's a newer show that came out on Netflix. If anyone knows Physical 100, which was like the Korean fitness challenge show that featured like, not surprisingly, 100 initial contestants of varying different athletic or physical training backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that, but for cooking, except there's the initial premise is again 100 people, chefs and cooks from many different backgrounds, from either home cooking or owning a restaurant themselves or being a line cook or working in Michelin starred restaurants. And there's 80 what they call black spoon chefs. They are the not amateur necessarily, but they are not as renowned chefs. And then there's 20 white spoon chefs who are the renowned ones. They're not just professionals at what they do, but they've also participated in a lot of cooking media so that their personalities are well known and they've probably won different cooking competitions themselves, such as like Iron Chef, Top Chef, Master Chef, and other Korean equivalents of those.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to have invited not just people of Korean cooking backgrounds, like there was like fine dining and Italian and Western styles and Chinese and Japanese, like pretty wide variety, although it was still obviously heavily invested in Korean backgrounds as the chefs themselves. Although some came over from America if they had like maybe mixed heritage or, like immigrant parents and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just more for the flow of the show so they don't have to translate everything in terms of language barriers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really good time. The show's already finished. I think there's 12 episodes. It's either 10 or 12, I forget. But it's a really fun time. Like, you see, there's so much good food that goes out there. And one of the nice things about it is that because there's so many different culinary backgrounds being involved, they try not to limit or bias like dishes towards chefs that have maybe more experience or academic backgrounds in cooking, such as like because there's a chef that's well, sorry, I can't use the word chef for her, even though I think she's really cool. But there's a lunch lady who
A
who
lunch
makes it on the
lady?
show.
A
Yeah,
lunch lady.
she makes it. Um, she makes the initial cutoff. Again, no real spoilers, but she at least makes the initial cutoff, and she's just really like even though her food isn't fancy, she's good at what she does.
Okay.
I
And
feel like
there's
the
also
difference between like a lunch lady working at a school or something else like that versus like a chef in a restaurant, the difference is being able to make 1,000 of the same meals all at once versus making one of the same meal 100 times a night, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It is a completely different skill set, but it is so interesting.
Yeah.
But as Bruce Lee said, I fear not the man who has practiced 1,000 different kicks one time, but one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Valid. So what were some of your favorite moments? Like if you could sort of handpick a couple that you've seen.
I mean, again, in the general sense, one of the things that they really emphasize is creativity, and not creativity as in dipping strawberries into gravy, but more of the,
Oh,
that's a callback. That's comedy, baby.
No.
But really, like, it's not just about, like, for example, we all know that fine dining is called fine dining for a reason. Like the both the flavors and the textures tend to balance really well, and they're very unique and creative. And there is more than a handful of fine dining chefs. That being said, they don't automatically win the challenges set before them because the challenges are set up in a way where they try to really create an even battleground for, again, things like creativity, textures, different backgrounds of cooking.
that's what I liked about Physical 100.
Yeah, and one of my favorite...
That makes sense why you're bringing that up, because in Physical 100, you think, oh, all the strong guys are going to win. The way that the challenges were set up, it gave a lot of smaller people very good chances to proceed.
They tried. Although I will speak on that in just a sec, because I have a gripe about that show. But
Fair.
in Culinary Class Wars, I think my favorite thing that I saw, that, not talking about any specific dish, because there's so many good dishes that you'll see, I really, really liked seeing... So, sorry, the background is important. Because Korea is obviously so close to China, there are a lot of crossover dishes that are inspired by Chinese dishes. And not unlike American Chinese cooking, there will be reinterpretations of the classic Chinese dish to suit more of a Korean palate. But I appreciated seeing those kind of crossover fusion type dishes because, first of all, I actually don't really believe in culinary purity in terms of, like, people will be like, a French omelet has to be like this. And I'm like, I get it. I get why it's good. I've had French omelets. I can make one. They're really, really good for what they are. But to see someone from a different background, both culturally and culinarily, take a well-known Chinese dish and reinterpret it is kind of like taking something that I know and love, like the taste of home, and seeing them change it up makes me want to try it more because I've had the traditional dish, 100 different times, prepared in the traditional way 100 different times, but I've never had something where someone's personal influences came from a different part of the world and they really, made it their own. I think that's really important, and that makes for better food overall, like to evolve things.
100%.
If we all only made traditional food, we'd still be eating like meat that's only cooked over a campfire.
Exactly. I have railed over and over again about how people are like, no, you must preserve the purity of the Italiano food. And I'm like, no, you don't.
The purity will always exist.
Tomatoes aren't even native to Italy originally.
They're not even native to Europe.
Like, there's so many things that we look at as traditional food from especially from Europe that doesn't come from Europe. And in some cases, they call it food from somewhere else where it doesn't exist from somewhere else. A classic example would be like ginger beef. Canadians think it's Chinese food. It never existed in China.
No.
It's from here. It came from, to my
Canadian
understanding,
thing.
Chinese immigrants, of course, but it's Canadian food.
I
The
mean-
same as like Indian curry was popularized by the British.
Yes.
Yes,
Butter
but
chicken
Indians-
was made in London.
Yeah, but East Indians themselves don't really have curry. Like
Yeah.
it's not a specific type of dish for them by the culinary definition, and I think that's really cool. Another weird thing in terms of what is thought to be American Chinese, sweet and sour pork has its roots in South Chinese cooking, in Hong Kong culinary cooking. It's not specifically an American Chinese dish.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
It's the same way that pizza has evolved to be
True.
completely different in every corner of the world.
Um,
Fuck tradition, make good food. Dip strawberries
Agree.
in gravy, see what happens.
yeah. And again, not forgetting the biggest argument in all of this for not needing to absolutely always preserve culinary purity is the fact that food is meant to be shared. And if it's
Yeah.
meant to be shared, then we all
Yeah.
have different tastes. So you have to cook to taste. Or else because if you don't do that, you might be not a good cook.
Absolutely. Like,
You
as
know?
an example, my father-in-law hates onion. He hates onion. He will refuse to eat anything that contains onion. And quite frankly, he's wrong. Grow up. But does that mean that I'm going to remove onion from the stuffing over this weekend? Maybe.
Maybe.
I'll either try to make 2 pans of it, or maybe I'll mush up the onion so small that he can't notice it. Or maybe I'll go the opposite and make the onion so large that he can pick it out.
It'd be really nice. Would be caramelized onion stuffing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You could
But that's just
caramelize
because
the
caramelized
onions. They
onion
taste
is-
totally different.
Oh, caramelized onions. Sorry, before we get too far, I want to get back to that physical 100 point real quick.
Okay.
So I've already espoused why I like culinary class wars because they even the playing field. I do feel bad about physical 100 because the women would never win. Watching that show, it's not necessarily a bias. It's just sort of a physiological truth in how the biology of it kind of has to come in play, where being taller helps, or having a wider
Actually,
wingspan.
for raw strength, short men have the advantage over tall men.
That is
The
true
leverage
too.
is there.
But there are
Oh.
challenges where height does come into play, or there are challenges where raw strength, and we're just talking raw strength, come into play. And while some women are definitely stronger than some men, in that particular show and the formatting of it, you can't ask and expect that result.
True.
Culinary
But
class
I
wars
want to
is
say the
superior.
first 80% of the show, I would argue that they were very good about formatting the challenges in ways that would keep women and people who were just differently physically fit in the game. Like, there were some of those early challenges that explicitly disadvantaged the super buff, burly, heavy, rippling muscled dudes.
I mean, I think most of those guys were out by like the first quarter of the show, if I
I
remember
think
correctly.
close to the end of the show, there were 2 of those massive dudes left. The absolute
Thanos.
gorillas among men.
There was the Thanos dude. But I was
there was
also thinking
the
about
the car
like
dealer guy, if you remember him.
yeah, but I don't like what I was thinking of were more of the strongman build as opposed to the athletic plus strong. Like strongman builds, typically guys will have the huge arms and shoulders and chest, but they also tend to have
Ah,
more of a pot belly instead of like very defined abs or anything like that.
yeah.
So those guys were out pretty early.
There was one of those guys that made it to the end, and that was the car dealership guy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true, but
Oh,
not. Anyways, it's a
anyways,
good time. I really recommend it.
we are, of course, an anime and Japanese culture podcast, so we're going to talk about anime and Japanese culture. Goddammit, Uzumaki by Junji Ito. The first episode aired to absolute fanfare. This is an anime that has been expected since, 2018, I think they first announced it.
Wow.
Being produced in part with Adult Swim. And unfortunately being produced and starting and announced at 2018. The production of it got sidelined by COVID a lot. A lot. And so that's why it's taken until 2024 for it to come out. And while the hopes were originally very high, that first episode of it was insanely good. The music, the pacing, the dialogue, everything was perfect. The animation was immaculate and unsettling. It is so rare for anime horror to actually feel scary. Unfortunately, the curse of Junji Ito anime adaptations lives on. We had Gyo a long time ago. We had the Uzumaki collection only a scant few years ago. And finally, the curse has come to Uzumaki as well. While the
Oh, dear.
first episode was fantastic, the absolute drop in animation quality for the second episode had everybody online scratching their heads being like, what's going on? What happened? What is going on here? And apparently, even the executive producer of Uzumaki, Jason DeMarco from Toonami, he came out and just said, "Yeah, we were screwed." His words, literally, "We were screwed." He didn't go into the absolute details of what happened, but it's going to be like a 4-episode miniseries.
Oh,
And while the first episode was done by a specific studio, I can't remember the name, later episodes were done by a separate studio just because COVID got in the way. I guess the original studio wasn't an option anymore. Budgets ran high. And so in the second episode, I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. Quite frankly, the music score is still perfect. I would argue that the dialogue, the character acting, the voice acting is still quite well done. Even the directing and pacing was good. And the animation quality dipped so much that it unfortunately it takes you out of the experience. It's hard to take a horror anime seriously when suddenly like the lip flaps are completely gone. A walking animation looks like two people, just two frames being flipped around. When the perspective just doesn't work anymore. Where in the first episode, sometimes they were using 3D models, but it was hard to tell. In the second episode, some of the 3D was really poorly done. And it's disappointing. I'm going to be
perhaps.
sticking with it. It's going to be airing today. The third episode is going to be airing as we're talking about it, and I'm going to watch it tonight. But unfortunately, I really, really, really have to roll back my expectations at this point.
That's unfortunate. We had such high expectations.
We really did.
I mean, and Uzumaki is probably one of Junji Ito's best series. So it's
one of his
like
most
an extra
well-known, right?
shame. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess poor production quality was the real horror in the genre.
Oh.
It really was. Yeah. Oh, it's so unfortunate. It's so unlucky. But,
I mean,
a lot of
when it
people did some good work to get that first episode out there. And I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy it. Hopefully, I can get past the animation flubs because the rest of it is just so competent. It is so well done. It is a shame that the animation portion is the only lagging feature.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in an animated feature like this, that kind of is the first thing that you experience and you have the highest expectations of.
It really is. It really is. It's such a shame.
Like, and I don't know if this is true for either of you, but when I play a game, I have a lot of different types of expectation. And if one thing falls kind of short, I can usually prop it up with everything else. But I can't do it if the animation for an anime is bad. Like, it's really, really hard.
Oh,
Well,
it's so hard.
considering anime, the word, is just based off animation. If that's bad, then what do you have left? It's like saying I went to a movie where I stared at a still frame image.
Well, I want to give a little bit of slack because there are some fantastic anime out there that are barely animated.
It's true.
Quite frankly, as much as I love it, and I really do love it, the Bakemonogatari series, if you actually analyze an episode, so much of it is still frames. So much of it is actually barely animated.
Yes.
It is really well done. Like, the dialogue is interesting. I love the characters. The music is great. And while I will say it is barely animated, what is animated looks pretty good.
Well,
It
lot of
doesn't
that-
look jarring. It looks correct.
like that's an art direction, you know?
It
Like,
is.
That is an art. That's an artistic
Bakemonogatari
choice
is a style.
versus, yes, it's not just a like, oh no, we went into production issues or budgeting issues or, you know, like I think a really interesting example would be Spider-Man. Not Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse. Is that the first
Into
one?
the Spider-Verse? The first
Into
one?
was the first one?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse, they purposely, whenever they have Miles Morales do his early Spider-Manning, they change the frame rate of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they change the frame rate of his movements relative to Peter B. Parker's much more smooth frame rates because they want to show like his jankiness and his inexperience in a very physical, like visual manner, as opposed to just him being clumsy or just him messing up. You can see, and your brain sort of understands that like he is not fluid and fluent in the ways of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that in
And
the
it's
middle of
just-
the movie.
That is part of the art of animation. You aren't just simply drawing frames and making things move on screen. The way that you abuse the frame rate is it is another depth. And almost not too many animations actually do that. Not too many anime or movies or anything abuse the frame rate in that way. Usually they're trying to tiptoe around the frame rate. They're trying to work with it to do what they want to and make it look good while not spending too much money. They're like, yeah, we're gonna animate it at 24 frames per second, but only 12 of those are gonna be keyframes or even in between frames. And if we ever want something to look good, okay, then we'll do all 24 frames as separate things. But then you get into the Spider-Verse where individual characters will move at different frame rates within the same animation. Or if you think about Akira, a lot of people try to say, yeah, it was animated on ones. It was animated at like proper 24 frames per second. And while the animation does run at 24 frames per second, a lot of the individual items are animated at 12 frames per second. But a cheeky thing they did, one item on screen will have like a keyframe on frame 1, and then on frame 2 it'll be the same, but a different item on screen will have that motion on keyframe 2, and then keyframe 3, that first item will have its second keyframe. On frame 4, that second item will have its second keyframe. So it looks like it's running at 24 frames per second, when really it's technically 12. It's technically running and animated on 2s. But it tricks the eye. You can't tell.
Cool.
It's so cool. I do
My
love
brain
animation.
too dumb to know.
I love that. I love that because it kind of reminds me of that one software developer in the 80s who knew every line of a certain piece of firmware. And he knew that if you reorganized one line and used one different go-to, that was like the best way to utilize it.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah. It's very much screams that to me, like that level of mastery. I love it.
Yes. Oh. And I think that's about all that we have time for today, dear listeners.
Time to go sweep up some leaves.
It's
go
time
clean
to
up for my
master
guests.
this episode.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the audio anyways.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good meal. See you all next time.
Strawberries and gravy. Believe it.
No!
No.